Captain Elias Ward sat quietly inside the shuttle, his eyes fixed on the endless sea of stars outside the viewport. For a man who had seen countless planets, strange skies, and alien wonders, space still had a way of humbling him. Yet, even with all his experience, he could not stop his mind from circling around the words of his commanding officer. "You have been chosen for a very delicate duty. Protect the Seraphari princesses at all costs." The words sounded simple, but Elias knew there was nothing simple about them. The Seraphari Empire was one of the most advanced and powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their twin princesses, Liara and Selene, were not just royal heirs. They were symbols of unity for their people. If anything happened to them, the entire galaxy could fall into chaos. And now, a human soldier, someone from a world still considered young in galactic politics, had been assigned as their personal guardian. Elias leaned back in his seat and let out a slow breath. He wondered why the council had chosen him. There were thousands of highly trained Seraphari guards, warriors who had spent their entire lives protecting the royal family. Why would they bring in an outsider, an alien, a human of all things? The shuttle landed gently on the crystalline landing pad of Seraphis Prime, the royal capital world. A soft light shimmered across the surface, reacting to the ship's presence. As Elias stood adjusting his dark uniform, he felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The hatch opened, and he stepped out into the warm glow of twin suns. The city of Seraphis stretched before him like something out of a dream, towers of silver and crystal reaching toward the sky, bridges of glowing light spanning rivers that shimmered with colors unknown to Earth. Everything seemed alive, humming faintly with energy. Waiting at the base of the ramp was a tall figure in ceremonial armor, his pale blue skin glowing faintly. His long robes bore the crest of the royal family. Captain Elias Ward. The alien greeted with a voice, like a clear bell. "I am Arion, commander of the Royal Guard. You have been summoned to serve as guardian to the twin heirs. Follow me." Elias nodded. He kept his posture straight, masking the unease building in his chest. He had dealt with alien officials before, but this was different. This was the very heart of power. As they walked through the palace grounds, Elias tried to take in everything. The gardens filled with floating flowers, the statues that seemed to breathe, the quiet whisper of wings from creatures that glided through the air. Yet his thoughts kept returning to the task ahead. Finally, they entered the grand hall of the palace. The ceiling rose so high it was lost in golden mist. At the far end of the chamber, two figures stood side by side, the princesses. Even among the Seraphari, they were extraordinary. Princess Liara wore robes of silver that caught the light and reflected it like flowing water. Her eyes were sharp, filled with intelligence and command, though a faint smile softened her features. Beside her, Princess Selene was dressed in soft, white and blue, her expression calm and thoughtful, her gaze lingering on Elias as if she were trying to read his soul. For a moment, Elias forgot to breathe. He had faced enemy soldiers, hostile environments, and near-death experiences. Yet nothing had prepared him for standing before royalty, especially royalty of such alien beauty and presence. Arion bowed deeply. "Your Highnesses, this is Captain Elias Ward of Earth. He has been appointed by the Interstellar Council to serve as your guardian." Liara's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "A human? That is unusual. Tell me, Captain, do you know why you were chosen?" Elias straightened, his voice firm. "No, Your Highness. I was given my orders and I obeyed. My duty is to protect you both, no matter the reason behind my assignment." Selene tilted her head slightly, studying him. "He speaks plainly. That is rare in this court." Liara gave a soft laugh. "Rare and refreshing." Elias felt a small wave of relief. At least they didn't seem displeased by his presence. Still, he noticed the eyes of the court surrounding them. Advisors, nobles, guards, all of them were watching him closely. He could almost hear their silent doubts. Why a human? Why place their future in the hands of an outsider? Liara stepped forward. "Very well, Captain Ward. If you are to be our guardian, you must know this. Danger follows us at every step. Assassins, rival houses, Even foreign empires seek to end our lives before we can inherit the throne. If you fail, it will not only be our deaths, it may be the fall of Seriphus itself." Her words hung heavy in the air. Elias bowed his head slightly. "I will not fail, Princess." Celine's voice was soft but steady. "We shall see." That night, Elias was given chambers within the royal wing of the palace. As he unpacked the few belongings he carried, a photo of Earth, his standard issue, knife and a worn notebook, he thought about the strange position he was in. Back on Earth, he had been just another soldier. Now, he was responsible for the lives of two beings whose importance stretched across the galaxy. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling of his room, which shimmered faintly with starlight. He thought of the princesses, Liara's confident gaze, Celine's searching eyes, and wondered what kind of lives they lived, always under the threat of danger, always carrying the weight of expectation. He wondered if they ever wished for freedom, for a chance to be something other than symbols. The first test came sooner than expected. 2 days into his assignment, Elias accompanied the princesses on a ceremonial walk through the Crystal Gardens. The gardens were famous across the galaxy, filled with trees of living glass and streams that glowed softly at night. Crowds of citizens gathered, bowing deeply as the princesses passed. Liara waved gracefully, while Celine offered a small nod to those who greeted her. Elias walked 3 steps behind, his eyes scanning the crowd with the practiced focus of a soldier. At first, everything seemed peaceful. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Elias noticed a movement that didn't fit. A figure in the crowd, a cloaked shape, too tense, too deliberate. Without thinking, Elias moved. His hand closed around the hidden weapon just as it was drawn, a blade glowing with poisonous light. With a swift strike, he knocked the assailant to the ground, the weapon clattering away. Gasps filled the garden. Guards rushed forward, surrounding the attacker, but all eyes turned to Elias. Liara's face lit with admiration. "Quick reflexes, Captain. You saved us." Celine's calm voice carried a hint of surprise. He saw what even our trained guards missed. Arian, the commander of the Royal Guard, frowned, but he could not deny the truth. Elias had acted faster than anyone else. For Elias, it was instinct, nothing more. For the Seraphari court, it was proof that perhaps this strange human had been chosen for a reason after all. That night, Liara summoned Elias to the observatory tower. The stars spread out in every direction, brighter and closer than he had ever seen. "You risked your life without hesitation," she said, her silver eyes shining. "Why?" Elias shrugged. "Because that's my job. I was assigned to protect you. I don't need another reason." Liara smiled faintly. "Perhaps that is what makes you different from others in this palace. They serve because of power, politics, or ambition. You serve because it is right." Celine entered quietly, carrying a data pad. She studied Elias again with those deep, thoughtful eyes. "The human spirit. It is unpredictable. Perhaps that is why the council sent you here." Elias looked from one princess to the other, unsure what to say. At that moment, standing beneath the starlight with the twin heirs of an empire, he realized one thing with certainty. His life was no longer his own. His choices, his courage, even his mistakes, everything would shape the future of Seriphus. The palace of Seriphus Prime was unlike anything Captain Elias Ward had ever known. It was not simply a fortress of stone or a symbol of wealth. It was alive with light and sound. Hallways seemed to glow faintly, as if the very walls were made of starlight. Gardens stretched across terraces that floated in midair, filled with plants that sang when touched by the wind. To many, the palace was a paradise. But to Elias, it was a battlefield waiting to happen. Every corner, every shadow, every gathering of nobles could hide danger. He had already seen one assassin in the Crystal Gardens. He knew there would be more. A guardian among nobles. The following days were filled with ceremonies and meetings. The princesses were constantly surrounded by advisors, ministers, and representatives of different Seraphari houses. Elias stood behind them, silent and watchful, his eyes scanning every detail. At first, the nobles ignored him. To them, he was only a human, an outsider, a symbol of the council's strange decision. Some whispered that he was unworthy, others that he was a spy sent to control the royal heirs. But slowly, whispers began to change. Every time Elias spotted a small detail, a servant who moved too quickly, a hidden weapon in the robes of a visitor, a guard who avoided his eyes, he proved his worth. He prevented accidents before they could happen, exposed spies who had disguised themselves as servants, and even stopped a poisoning attempt when he noticed the faint shimmer in a goblet of wine. The princesses began to trust him in ways they had never trusted anyone else. The two sisters Elias also started to learn the differences between the twin princesses. Princess Liara, the elder by only minutes, was bold and outspoken. She carried herself with authority, walking into every room as if she already owned it. Nobles listened to her voice, and common people adored her smiles. She often teased Elias about his seriousness, calling him stone face whenever he refused to relax. Yet beneath her confidence, Elias sensed the pressure she carried, the need to prove herself as the rightful heir. Princess Celine, on the other hand, was quiet and reserved. She preferred the libraries and observatories over the throne room. While Liara debated politics, Celine studied ancient texts or designed new star maps. She often asked Elias questions about Earth, about its people, its history, its mistakes. Her curiosity was endless, and unlike Liara, she rarely smiled. But when she did, it was like a hidden treasure. Together they were a perfect balance. Liara, the fire. Celine, the calm water. And Elias found himself caught between them, learning from both, protecting both, and slowly caring for both in ways he had not expected. The shadow in the palace. One evening, as the twin suns set behind the crystal towers, Elias was patrolling the eastern wing of the palace. The halls were quiet, the air filled only with the faint hum of energy flowing through the walls. That was when he noticed it. Movement in the shadows. A figure slipped silently across the corridor. Cloaked and hooded, Elias followed, his footsteps soft, his hand ready on the hilt of his blade. The figure moved with purpose, heading toward the private chambers of the princesses. Elias quickened his pace. Just as the figure reached the chamber door, Elias grabbed him and slammed him against the wall. The hood fell back, revealing a pale-faced servant, but in his hand was a small device glowing faintly with red light. A disruptor charge, Elias muttered, his heart pounding. The servant struggled, eyes wide with fear. "You don't understand." Before he could finish, Elias disarmed him and pinned him to the ground. Guards rushed in at the sound of the struggle, but Elias was already in control. The device was taken away, and the servant was dragged to the dungeons. That night, the court buzzed with rumors. An assassin, caught within the palace walls, only steps away from the princess's chambers. And it was not the guards who had stopped him. It was the human guardian. A conversation at midnight later, Elias stood on the balcony outside his chambers, staring at the stars. He could not rest. The attempt had been too close, and he knew there would be more. A soft voice broke the silence. "You do not sleep, Captain." It was Celine. She stood in a flowing robe, her hair loose, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Elias bowed slightly. "I'm not used to comfort. My duty keeps me awake." Celine stepped closer, her gaze thoughtful. "You saw what no one else did, not even our guards. How?" "I don't know," Elias admitted. "Humans survive because we notice what doesn't fit. We adapt. Maybe that is why the council chose me." Celine studied him for a long moment. "Adaptation, unpredictability. That is what we lack. Our people are strong, but sometimes too certain, too rigid. Perhaps you are here to remind us of change." Elias met her eyes, and for a heartbeat the world seemed to fall away. Then Liara's voice broke the moment. "There you are, sister, hiding in the stars again?" Liara appeared, smiling as always, though there was a hint of worry in her eyes. She looked at Elias. "You keep us alive, Captain. But do not forget, you must also live. Do not become a shadow in these halls." Elias gave a small nod. "I will remember." The twins exchanged a glance, and for a moment Elias felt as though they shared a secret he could not yet understand. The gathering storm, in the weeks that followed, the attacks grew bolder. Poisoned letters, hidden traps, even hacked security systems. Every attempt failed, thanks to Elias's vigilance. But each failure only proved that the enemy was becoming more desperate. The court grew uneasy. Nobles argued, ministers shouted, and whispers of war filled the palace. Some accused rival houses, others blamed foreign empires. Elias remained silent, but inside he was troubled. Someone powerful was behind these attacks. Someone who knew the palace well. One night, as he walked the silent corridors, Elias realized something important. The true danger was not outside the palace walls. It was inside. The secret meeting. His suspicion was confirmed when he overheard voices in a hidden chamber below the palace. The twins must not live to inherit the throne, one voice whispered. The human is dangerous. He has ruined every attempt. He must be removed. Elias's blood ran cold. He leaned closer, but the conversation ended. By the time he entered the chamber, it was empty. Only the echo of betrayal remained. He returned to his quarters with heavy thoughts. There was a traitor in the palace, someone close enough to know every detail of the princesses' lives, someone who would not stop until they succeeded, and Elias knew what that meant. The real war had not yet begun. A vow the next morning, Elias stood guard as the princesses prepared for another day of meetings. Layara laughed at something an advisor said, while Selene quietly read through a scroll. For a moment, Elias simply watched them, the fire and the calm, the two halves of an empire that needed them. He clenched his fists and made a silent vow. "I will protect them," he whispered under his breath. "No matter the cost. Even if the enemy hides among their own people, even if the palace itself turns against them, I will not let them fall." The shadows in the palace were growing darker, but Elias Ward was human, and if there was one thing humanity had always been known for, it was fighting back when all odds were against them. And in this palace of light and lies, that human spirit might be the only thing keeping the twin princesses alive. The palace of Seraphis Prime no longer felt like a place of safety. To Captain Elias Ward, it felt more like a fortress under siege. The marble halls and crystal towers still shone brightly under the twin suns, but behind that beauty was constant tension. The attacks on the princesses had not stopped. If anything, they had grown more dangerous, more organized. Elias knew what that meant. The enemy was not just a group of assassins. It was an empire, preparing for war. The signs of conflict it began, with rumors, border disputes, missing trade fleets, colonies going silent. At first, nobles dismissed them as accidents, but Elias had lived long enough as a soldier to recognize the pattern. Small sparks were only the beginning of a larger fire. In the council chambers, ministers shouted over one another, blaming rival powers. "It is the Drakthar Dominion," one cried. "They seek to crush our empire before the princesses ascend the throne." "No," another argued. "It is the House of Elthis within our own borders. They have long opposed the twins' inheritance. They feed lies to outsiders." Princess Liara stood tall at the center of the chaos, her voice cutting through the noise. "Enough. Our people look to us for strength, not for quarrels. If war is coming, we will face it united." Selene, more reserved, added softly, "But unity requires truth. We must discover who truly pulls the strings." Elias remained silent at the edge of the chamber, but his eyes were sharp. He had already seen enough to know the truth. Both inside and outside forces were moving against the princesses, and unless they acted quickly, war would sweep across the galaxy. A new role for Elias. After the meeting, Liara called Elias to her private chamber. She stood by the wide window, gazing at the glowing city below. "You were a soldier once, were you not?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Yes, Princess. I fought in border skirmishes for the Earth Coalition. I commanded men, led missions." "Then I ask you this," Liara said, turning toward him, her silver eyes shining. Will you be more than our guardian? Will you be our strategist? Elias hesitated. He had been assigned to protect, not to command fleets of a foreign empire. But he could see the resolve in Liara's gaze and Celine's quiet agreement as she entered the room. You think differently than we do, Celine said. Our generals are skilled, but they fight as our people always have. Predictable, precise. You are human, unpredictable, flexible. That may be what we need. Elias gave a slow nod. If you wish it, then yes. I will help you prepare for what's coming. Liara smiled faintly. Good, because the storm is already at our gates. The first battle. The storm arrived sooner than expected. Only a week later, reports came from the outer colonies. Fleets of the Drakthar Dominion had crossed into Seriferi space. The Royal Guard scrambled to respond. Generals deployed ships. In the traditional diamond formation, elegant, powerful, but familiar. The Drakthar broke through with ease, their savage fleets tearing apart colonies before the Serifari ships could even react. Elias studied the battle reports with cold focus. They know your formations. They've studied your tactics for years. If you fight them the same way, you will lose every time. The generals frowned at him, some openly scoffing at the idea of listening to a human, but the princesses silenced them. Then what do you suggest? Liara asked. Elias placed a hand on the star map. Do not meet them head-on. Break their rhythm, hit and fade. Strike where they are weakest, not where you expect them to be strong. Let them chase shadows until they grow careless. The room grew silent. Finally, Celine spoke. An unpredictable war. It suits him. Victory. Through uncertainty, under Elias's guidance, the Serifari fleets changed their tactics. Instead of standing in perfect lines, they scattered, striking from hidden positions, retreating into nebula clouds, and using decoy signals to lure the enemy into traps. The Drakthar, who expected a direct fight, grew frustrated. Their fleet stumbled into ambushes, their supply lines were cut, and their commanders began to make mistakes. For the first time in weeks, the Serifari gained victories, colonies were saved, and morale returned to the people. In the palace, Elias became a symbol. Whispers spread through the halls. The human turns the tide. Perhaps he is the reason the princesses still live. The sisters trussed late one night after another victory report. Elias was summoned to the observatory tower. The stars shone brightly above, casting silver light across the chamber. Liara stood waiting, her posture proud yet softened by exhaustion. Celine sat nearby, reading through battle data, her eyes calm as always. You have saved more lives than you realize, Liara said, stepping closer to him. Our people begin to believe again. Elias shook his head. It was not just me. Your fleets fought bravely. Your people have strength. But you gave them direction, Celine said softly. You gave them a chance. For a moment, the three of them stood in silence, the weight of the galaxy pressing down yet eased by their shared bond. Elias realized then how much the princesses trusted him, not just as a guard, but as a partner in their struggle. And though he tried to remain distant, professional, he could not deny the respect and admiration he felt for them in return. The price of war but victory came with a cost. The enemy grew more desperate. Raids struck closer to the core worlds. Refugees poured into Serifis Prime, filling the streets with fear, and within the palace, the shadow of betrayal deepened. More, spies were uncovered, some even among the high-ranking ministers. Elias knew the truth. War outside was only half the danger. Inside, the palace still held enemies waiting for the perfect chance to strike. One evening, as he returned from the War Council, Elias found Celine alone in the library. She sat among ancient scrolls, her face lit by the glow of a star map. You look troubled, Elias said. She looked up at him, her expression calm but sad. Troubled? Yes. Because I wonder if this war will change us. My sister burns with passion, our people hunger for victory, and even you carry the fire of battle in your eyes. But what will remain when the fire fades? Elias thought for a moment. War always changes people. On Earth I saw it many times. But change is not always loss. Sometimes it is strength. Celine studied him, then gave a faint smile. Perhaps that is why I believe in you. A narrow escape. The next morning, an explosion shook the eastern wing of the palace. Smoke filled the corridors, and alarms echoed through the halls. Elias rushed to the source, his heart racing. The blast had torn through the princess's private gardens. Debris littered the ground and flames licked at the crystal walls. Liara emerged coughing but unharmed, while Celine was pulled to safety by guards. Both were shaken but alive. Elias scanned the wreckage, his eyes narrowing. The device had been planted carefully, timed perfectly. Whoever set it knew the princess's routines. This was no random attempt. This was the work of someone inside the palace. The oath renewed. That night, as the city repaired the damage, Elias stood guard outside the princess's chambers. He could hear their voices within, Liara fiery and determined, Celine calm but concerned. He tightened his grip on his weapon and made a silent promise. I will not let them fall. Not to assassins, not to traitors, not to empires. If I must fight the whole galaxy, then so be it. The war on the horizon had already reached their doorstep, and Elias Ward, a human soldier far from Earth, had become more than a guardian. The war had brought more than just battles to Seraphis Prime. It had brought fear, uncertainty, and whispers of betrayal. Captain Elias Ward walked the palace halls, his boots clicking softly against the crystal floors, alert to every sound, every movement. The palace that had once seemed safe now felt fragile, like a glass sculpture ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Rumors and rumors circulated faster than the ships in the outer fleets. Ministers whispered about secret alliances. Nobles murmured that humans could not be trusted. Even some of the royal guard, trained for decades, began to doubt Elias's loyalty simply because he was different. Elias ignored most of it. His focus was the princesses. Liara, ever bold, treated him with steady trust while Celine observed quietly, her faith in him unwavering. But doubt was a powerful weapon, and soon it would come to test him in ways no sword or strategy ever could. The invitation, it began with a message. A sealed letter delivered late at night, marked with the insignia of an unknown faction within the Seraphari Empire. Elias read the words carefully. Come alone to the abandoned observatory. If you wish to continue protecting the princesses, your loyalty must be proven. Fail and you will lose them forever. The handwriting was precise, alien, and unmistakably Seraphari, but the sender remained a mystery. Elias did not hesitate. He prepared carefully, checking his weapons, scanning his environment, and studying the observatory's layout from memory. He knew he was walking into a trap, but if this was a test of loyalty, he could not refuse. Into the trap the abandoned observatory sat at the edge of the city, overlooking the glowing river that ran through Seraphis Prime. Its towers were cracked and partially collapsed, but it had once been a center of science and knowledge. Now, it was a perfect place for an ambush. Elias entered silently, his senses alert. Shadows moved strangely in the shattered corridors, and the faint hum of energy filled the air. He could feel it, the tension, the danger, and the eyes of unseen watchers. Suddenly the door slammed shut behind him. Automatic locks sealed the exits. You came, a voice said. It was calm, almost cold, yet familiar in its tone. From the shadows stepped a Seraphari official, a high-ranking minister who had once attended the council meetings. His face was pale with calculated calm, his eyes sharp and unforgiving. You have grown close to the princesses, the official continued. Too close. Your loyalty is in question. Only one test will decide if you truly belong here, or if you are a threat to Seraphis. Elias kept his posture calm. I am here to protect the princesses, nothing else matters. The official gave a small, mocking smile. Words are easy, actions are harder. The challenge without warning, the minister activated a series of devices. Across the observatory, holographic images of the princesses appeared, trapped in what looked like cages of energy. You have 10 minutes, the official said. If you fail to free them, they will perish. Your loyalty, Captain, will be measured by your ability to act under pressure. Elias's heart raced, but he forced himself to stay calm. The holograms were illusions, he realized. Yet the test was not just about saving them. It was about keeping a clear mind while the pressure mounted. He studied the mechanisms surrounding the cages. Alien technology was always intricate, often requiring precise understanding of energy, flows, and timing. He had never been trained in Sarafari energy manipulation, but he had always been a quick learner. He traced the circuits, adjusting the energy fields in a careful sequence. Sparks flew, panels shifted, and the hum of power grew louder. Time ticked down. Quick thinking. The minister observed silently, a faint smirk on his face. You have little time. Remember, failure is fatal. Elias ignored him. He relied on instinct, logic, and the countless drills he had run in the past. One wrong move could trigger a real trap, and he knew it. A panel fell in front of him, almost blocking his path. Without hesitation, Elias vaulted over it, landing in a crouch. He recalibrated the energy channels, redirecting the currents with rapid adjustments. The cages began to flicker. The holograms of Liara and Selene shimmered, distorted by the energy flows. Elias clenched his teeth, determined not to fail. And then, just as the last second ticked down, the cages dissolved. The images vanished. The minister's smirk faded. Interesting, he muttered. You passed the test, for now. But remember, loyalty is not just action. It is also choice. You chose to act, even under pressure. That is why you live. Elias wiped sweat from his brow, breathing heavily. The test was over, but the warning remained clear. Enemies could be anywhere, even within the palace walls. Returning to the princesses, when Elias returned to the palace, Liara and Selene were waiting. The twins had been informed that he had been called away, and both looked worried. You are safe, Liara said, her voice sharp with relief. For a moment I feared the worst. Selene studied him, her calm eyes revealing the depth of her trust. You passed a test we could not administer, and in doing so you proved more than loyalty. You proved courage. Elias nodded, still catching his breath. I will always protect you. That has never changed. The sisters exchanged a glance. There was unspoken gratitude in their eyes and perhaps a hint of something deeper. Respect, admiration, maybe even a bond beyond words, shadows of betrayal. But the palace was not yet safe. While Elias had survived the test, he knew the officials' warning was real. The enemy was watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the official himself was proof that threats could come from inside, not just outside. Elias doubled his vigilance. He reviewed the palace security systems, increased patrols, and trained a small group of guards to operate under his direct command. Every corridor, every chamber, every access point was checked and rechecked. Even with all this preparation, Elias knew it would never be enough. The palace was vast, and the enemies were patient. Yet he felt no fear, not truly, because fear could paralyze a man. Duty, loyalty, and the bond he felt with the princesses gave him strength beyond fear. A moment of calm. That evening, after another long day, Elias found himself in the observatory with the twins. The city below glowed in golden light, and the stars above seemed closer than ever. Liara leaned on the balcony rail. You risk everything for us, Captain. Even when others doubt, you never waver. Elias shook his head. I do not do it for recognition. I do it because it is right. Because I cannot imagine failing you. Selene stepped closer, her eyes gentle. And yet you did more than protect us today. You proved that loyalty can be action, thought, and courage combined. That is rare, even among our people. Elias looked at them both. In that moment, he realized the depth of the connection forming. Not just duty, but something stronger. He was no longer just a guardian. He was part of their lives, part of their future, whether he wanted it or not. Preparing for the future. The war outside the palace raged on, but Elias's mind focused equally on threats inside. He began coordinating secret intelligence networks, training loyal guards and teaching the princesses subtle defensive strategies. Liara learned how to read people, Selene learned how to detect traps, and both began to understand the human approach to unpredictability in battle. Elias knew the next test would be harder. He did not know who could be trusted fully, but he understood one thing. Loyalty was not a gift given lightly. It was proven, day by day, decision by decision, and he would prove it every single day no matter what came. The promise that night Elias walked the halls alone. He paused at the window overlooking the palace gardens where the twin suns were setting behind the towers. He spoke softly, almost to himself. I will protect them. Not just today, not just tomorrow, but always. No enemy, no traitor, no empire will take them from me. I am their guardian, and I will never fail. The test of loyalty had been passed, but the real challenges were yet to come. And Elias knew that in a world filled with shadows, only humans could sometimes see the light. The war was over. The Drakthar fleets had been pushed back. The border colonies were safe, and the people of the Sarafari Empire were beginning to breathe again. The palace of Seraphis Prime, once tense and shadowed with danger, now glowed in a golden calm. But calm did not mean safety. Captain Elias Ward walked through the halls with the same alertness he had carried throughout the war. He knew threats could arise anywhere, yet something had shifted. The princesses, Liara and Selene, now looked to him not just as a guardian, not just as a strategist, but as something far more essential. Recognition and respect. The Sarafari court had gathered for a council meeting to discuss the empire's future. Nobles whispered as Elias entered, but their whispers were no longer of doubt. They were of respect, curiosity, and perhaps even awe. A human, a soldier from a distant world, had helped save the empire. Liara stood at the head of the council chamber. Her silver eyes glimmered with determination. The human who stood beside us through war has earned our trust. He has proven not just his skill, but his loyalty. Selene, quiet but commanding in her own way, added, He has taught us the value of adaptability, courage, and quick thinking. Our empire owes him more than gratitude. Elias bowed politely. I did only what any guardian should. My duty is to protect you and serve your people. Liara's smile softened. A simple answer, yet you have done what no one else could. And in doing so, you have become part of our lives in ways even the council could not foresee. Even the nobles nodded, some quietly murmuring agreement. Elias realized then that he had earned more than respect. He had earned a place in the empire itself. The unspoken bond later. That evening, Elias stood on the balcony of the palace overlooking the city. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow across the towers and gardens. Liara approached him quietly. Captain, she said softly, you have stood by us when no one else could. We have survived because of you. Elias turned to her, unsure how to respond. Words often failed him in moments of importance. Selene joined them, her gaze calm and steady. You have done more than protect us. You have shared our struggles, our fears, and our victories. That is rare. That is precious. Elias looked at both princesses. He felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never known on Earth. For the first time, he realized that his life had changed forever. I never expected this, he admitted. I was sent to guard you. That was all I thought I would do. Liara reached out, placing her hand lightly on his arm. And yet, your role has become far greater. You are part of our family now. Part of our destiny. Selene smiled faintly. And our destiny is stronger with you beside us. Elias swallowed hard. The truth was undeniable. His bond with the princesses was no longer only about duty. It was trust, friendship, and something deeper, something human and unspoken, a proposal of destiny. The following morning, the Sarafari Emperor summoned Elias and the princesses. The hall was filled with advisors and nobles, all waiting in tense silence. You have proven yourself, the Emperor said, his voice calm but commanding. Through loyalty, courage, and intelligence, you have saved not only my daughters but the Empire itself. For that, you have earned a place beside them, not only as guardian, but as part of their future." Elias's heart pounded. He had expected thanks, perhaps honors, but not this. Liara stepped forward boldly. "Father, Captain Elias Ward has stood by us in war and peace. He has proven his loyalty and his strength. I wish for him to stand beside me, not just as a guardian, but as my husband, if he so chooses." Celine nodded, her serene voice adding, "And I, too, wish for him to be beside me, not just in duty, but in partnership. He has become part of our lives, and without him, we would not be whole." The hall fell silent. The nobles looked astonished. A human marrying not one, but two princesses? It was unprecedented in Seriferi history, yet the Emperor's expression was thoughtful, not angry. "Captain Ward," he said finally, "do you accept this bond? Understand that it is not a simple role. It is a partnership, a duty, and a trust that will last for a lifetime." Elias looked at Liara and Celine. He saw trust, hope, and a bond that had been built over trials, dangers, and victories. Slowly, he nodded. "I accept. I will stand beside you, not only as your guardian but as your partner. I will share your future, your burdens, and your destiny." The Emperor inclined his head. "Then let it be so. May your union strengthen the Empire and inspire the galaxy." Celebration and peace. The palace erupted in celebration. Citizens filled the streets, singing and cheering. The twins walked with Elias at their side, proud, confident, and radiant. Nobles approached, offering congratulations and respect. Even former skeptics looked at him differently now, not as an outsider, but as a hero, a partner, and a symbol of unity. Elias walked among the people with them, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known. He was no longer a soldier far from home. He was part of an empire, part of something far larger than himself, and he felt at peace. Reflections on humanity. That night, Elias stood once more on the balcony looking at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly, full of wonders and dangers. He thought of Earth, of the life he had left behind, and of how far he had come. Humans were often underestimated, he realized. Small, young, and seemingly fragile among advanced civilizations. Yet it was human ingenuity, courage, and determination that had changed the course of this war. Human adaptability had saved not only the princesses but the Seriferi Empire. And it was human heart that had forged a bond that no alien protocol or tradition could break. The bond strengthened. The weeks that followed, Elias trained alongside the princesses. Liara learned not just tactics but trust in others, in allies, and in unexpected partners. Celine learned courage and flexibility, balancing her intellect with action. Together, they rebuilt the palace's defenses, strengthened alliances, and ensured that the Empire would be ready for any future threat. Elias no longer acted alone. He was part of a team, a family, and a bond that united two worlds, human and Serifari. A future unwritten. One evening, as the three stood together on the highest tower of the palace, Liara looked out across the city. "The galaxy is still dangerous," she said. "But with you beside us, Captain, we can face anything." Celine placed her hand on his shoulder. "We have chosen each other, and together we will shape the future, our empire, our people, and our lives." Elias looked at both of them, a quiet smile forming on his lips. "I never imagined this," he admitted. "Not as a guardian, not as a soldier, but I will do my best, not just to protect you, but to stand beside you in everything." The princesses nodded, their faces filled with trust and warmth. The three of them stood together, watching the twin suns rise over the crystal towers. The world was vast, full of challenges and wonders. But for the first time, Elias felt a certainty he had never known. He was no longer alone. He was part of something greater than himself. A human, an outsider, had become a symbol of hope, unity, and love. And for the first time in his life, Captain Elias Ward understood that destiny was not just something assigned. It was something built through courage, loyalty, and the bond of hearts united across worlds. Closing the Sarafari Empire had been saved, and its future was secure. The princesses had found a partner in Elias, not just a guardian, but a companion, a strategist, and a friend. And Elias had found a home, a purpose, and a family among the stars. As they looked out at the galaxy together, they knew that their bond, tested by war, strengthened by loyalty, and sealed by trust, would guide them through any challenge the universe could throw their way. The story of a human guardian who became more than duty had ended one chapter, but the adventure of life, love, and empire was only beginning.